Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.
Hello everyone, welcome to Insight IAS Delhi. This session is about the mains test series which is undergoing under the GS Prism program of Insight Delhi. This discussion is about the third test, mains test, with subject being ecology and ecosystem. So this test comprised 10 questions, 10 questions in all, very basic level test. The overall objective was to check your basic awareness, basic knowledge about basic definitions, basic concepts, and how much you know, and above all, how you are going to write an answer and to test your expression skills, to test your writing skills. These 10 questions, out of these 10 questions, 5 were 10 marker, and the remaining 5 were 15 marker. Total 125 marks, 10 questions. So let's start. Before we start, we should also understand that how to approach a question. So I will tell you, like after reading the question, what should be the basic approach, how should we start writing, and what are the basic stuffs, basic procedures, basic steps that you should follow before you start writing. So let's start. This is the first question. First thing is that you should read the question properly. Amid growing concerns over ecosystem disruptions and species loss, explain the concept of trophic level in a food chain. How does the food web provide stability to ecosystems compared to a simple food chain? Question may appear you very bit lengthy. This type of questions will keep coming in UPSC, actual UPSC examination. So before we before you pick your pen to write the answer, what is the first step? The first step is that you read the question properly. While reading the question, you should underline, you should identify the keywords. What are the keywords? Keyword is something that they hold very big importance to a particular statement. If you remove the keyword, the statement will become meaningless. Also, keywords are something around which a question is revolving. So unless and until you are identifying a particular keyword of the question, you won't be able to understand the demand of the question, the context of the question. And unless and until you are able to understand the demand of the question, you won't be able to write a proper answer. और जब तक आप एक contextual answer लिखेंगे नहीं, तब तक you won't be getting a proper good marks in your examination, in your answers, for your answers. So what could be the key terms? Let's identify the key terms. First is ecosystem disruption, then species loss. So the first statement of the question is talking about growing concerns over two things. First thing is ecosystem disruption, and second thing is species loss. So the first statement is talking about growing concerns related to two issues. First issue is ecosystem disruption, and second issue is species loss. Now the question is asking you to explain the concept of trophic level. This is the first keyword which the question is asking, trophic level in a food chain. This is the second keyword. So the question is asking you to explain the concept of trophic levels in a food chain. Then the question is asking, how does the food web is a third key term, how does the food web provide a stability to ecosystem as compared to simple food chain? So this question has two parts. First part is asking you to explain the concept of trophic level and food chain. The second part of the question is asking you to give a comparison between food web and food chain and explain how does food web provide a stability to ecosystem much better than food chain. So these are the two parts of the question, how you should write an answer. So first you identified the key terms. After identifying the key terms, you should think about your structure of the question. What could be the structure of this question? The first is like you can give an introduction. Your introduction could be about basic definition of trophic level and food chain. Like food chain is a graphical representation of flow of energy. This way you can simply write an introduction. You can also write about trophic levels in a food chain. Trophic levels are the different stages in a particular food chain. For example, consider this as a food chain. So this is one trophic level, consumers are the second trophic level, then decomposers are the next level. And in consumers itself, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, final consumer. So this way you can write about trophic levels in a food chain. You can write these in your own words, very crisply, very briefly. Next, you should focus on food web. You can define food web like food web is a complex form of food chain wherein multiple organisms, multiple species are interacting with other multiple species. For example, this is a food chain. In this food chain, one is grasshopper, other one is rat. Grasshopper and rat both are dependent on grains, and rat is all is feeding on rat, all is feeding on grasshopper both. So this way you can write ki food web is a complex form of food chain. Then the most important part of the question is the comparison between food web and food chain and how these two are related to stability to ecosystems. So you can simply tell that in the case of food chain, the arrangement is linear. If an organism at a particular trophic level is disturbed, for example, suppose grasshoppers get extinct, then the chain will break. But in case of food web, even if one species get disturbed or becomes extinct, still the food web will keep running because the owl is not only dependent on grasshopper, it is also dependent on rat. So even if grasshopper dies, owl can feed on rat. This is one aspect. So you can write that the food web provides more stability to ecosystems because of the multiple dependencies. And then you can give a conclusion, simple conclusion, that though these are graphical representation of the energy flow or the interaction among organisms, still the food web and food chain can help ecologists to assess the stress being faced by a particular ecosystem. This way you can write a brief explanation, a brief conclusion. Make sure that you have to conclude your answer within 150 words because it was a 10-marker question. Now we will move to next question. This question is nutrient cycling is vital for ecosystem sustainability and productivity. So this is a kind of introductory statement to the question. Nutrient cycling, one concept you must aware of, what is nutrient cycling, is vital for ecosystem sustainability and ecosystem productivity. So the introductory statement of the question establishes a relation between nutrient cycling and ecosystem sustainability and productivity. न्यूट्रिएंट साइक्लिंग का रिलेशन एस्टैब्लिश किया गया इकोसिस्टम सस्टेनेबिलिटी एंड प्रोडक्टिविटी से. But the question is, this is the introductory statement. The question is, describe the major biogeochemical cycles. So this is your first keyword. The question is about biogeochemical cycles and critically analyze the impact of human activities on these natural processes. Impact of human activities. Now, in this question, you will have to be very much careful because this question is asking about impact of human activities on these natural processes. So, two kinds of things. First is impact of biogeochemical cycles on humans. This could be one aspect. The other aspect is impact of humans on biogeochemical cycles. Right. So the question is talking or asking about this aspect. So in a hurry, you should not write the impact of biogeochemical cycles on humans. You should be very much careful while reading the question. So what could be your answer? So you can simply, in the introductory part, you can define biogeochemical cycles. What are biogeochemical cycles? Like the production of certain nutrients, their consumption, their destruction, and how the the cycle keeps running. You can give examples of carbon cycle, phosphorus cycle, nitrogen cycle, sulfur cycle. These examples you can give. You can also write about what are the sources of these cycles and how these cycles function. Then you need to analyze, critically analyze the impact of human activities on these natural processes. For example, if this is a carbon cycle, and in carbon cycle trees play a very important role, but human activities, deforestation, leading to destruction of forest. So this destruction of forest can adversely impact carbon cycle, which will adversely impact the entire atmosphere, entire global, entire earth. So this way you can simply write this. So this was also again 150 words 10 marker question. In conclusion, you can become a little bit visionary. See, the conclusion is all about summing up the entire idea you have written in the answer. But to make conclusion more attractive, you can become a little bit visionary, particularly if the question is not asking about any kind of suggestions or way forward. You can become a bit visionary in your conclusion. So in the conclusion of this question can be written as that it is very important to check the impact of human activities on these natural processes, and to check the human activities, better regulation of the construction activities, urbanization, इन चीज़ों को अच्छे से regulate किया जाना चाहिए. There should be better assessment of human activities, proper planning to check the loss, to check the destruction of natural processes. This way you can conclude your answer. Then we have the third question on different types of ecosystem found in India. Classify. The question is asking you to classify the types of ecosystems found in India. It is particularly about India. The question is particularly about India. Different types of ecosystems. What are the different types of ecosystems? See, the question is about ecosystems in India. The question is not talking about different kinds of geographical features of India. The question is not talking about different kinds of vegetation of India. So you need to be very much careful while writing the answer. You should not write that it is about rainforest, tropical rainforest, deciduous forest. This way you should not write, because the question is particularly talking about ecosystem. What are the ecosystems? So you should write over here terrestrial ecosystem, marine ecosystems of India. In terrestrial, you can write about this forest ecosystem, grassland ecosystem. In marine ecosystem, freshwater ecosystem, right? Aquatic ecosystem, terrestrial ecosystem. This way you can write as an answer to this question. So different types of ecosystems को पहले आपने classify कर दिया. First you can, as an introduction, you can define an ecosystem. Then you can give a classification. In classification you can also make a kind of flow chart after definition. This kind of flow chart, that here is aquatic, here is terrestrial, and in terrestrial there are deserts, there are forests. This way you can make a flow chart also to make your answer appealing. Then next part of the question is, how do these ecosystems contribute to ecological balance and biodiversity conservation in the face of growing anthropogenic pressures? So what are anthropogenic pressures? So the pressures arising due to human activities, that are called anthropogenic pressures. So the second part of the question is talking about how do these ecosystems contribute. इन इकोसिस्टम्स का कंट्रीब्यूट पूछा जा रहा है टू इकोलॉजिकल बैलेंस एंड बायोडाइवर्सिटी कंजर्वेशन. Again, identifying the keywords is very important. So the contribution is being asked regarding two aspects. First one is ecological balance and biodiversity conservation. So while writing the answer, if you are writing about the contribution of ecosystems, then you should handle both the aspects, ecological balance and biodiversity conservation, both. If you are missing one aspect, then certainly the examiner will check that one aspect is being missed, so you might be getting less marks. So you should write that the ecological balance and biodiversity conservation both, and particularly in the face of anthropogenic pressures. So you can write about deforestation, how the human activities like deforestation in India, how you can write about urbanization. You can give an example of Char Dham project, the highway project. You can also write about unsustainable tourism in Himalayan regions. You can write about mining in the Ghats region. You can write about mining in Niyamgiri hills. You can give examples, and you can write how these are leading to ecological disturbing the ecological balance and biodiversity conservation. In terms of biodiversity conservation, you can write about loss of wildlife from the Western Ghats, loss of species from the Himalayan region. This way you can write, and in again you can write a very visionary conclusion that there should be proper regulation, proper planning of the human activities. Then we have the fourth question is regarding explain the concept of an ecological food pyramid. The question is regarding ecological pyramid. What are ecological pyramid? How does it reflect the flow of energy? Another term is flow of energy. So your answer should be focused on flow of energy and matter through different trophic levels in an ecosystem. Illustrate its significance in understanding ecosystem stability. This is another key term, ecosystem stability. So while writing the answer to this question, the first thing is you should define ecological pyramid. What are ecological pyramid? Ecological pyramid, its types like pyramid of energy, pyramid of biomass, pyramid of numbers. How is ecological pyramid of energy is always upright because of unidirectional flow of energy? In what circumstances pyramid of biomass or number can be inverted, can be upright? This way you can write very briefly in the introductory part, or you can like first part of your body of the answer. Then the question is asking how does it reflect the flow of energy and matter through different trophic levels in an ecosystem. So as I just mentioned, while writing about the different kinds of ecological pyramids, you should also write how the energy is getting transferred from one level to another level. For example, consider this as an energy pyramid. So the primary producers to primary consumers. So in energy pyramid, only 10% of energy gets transferred and remaining energy gets lost as heat. So this is one aspect you can write in this flow of energy. जो पूछा जा रहा है फ्लो ऑफ एनर्जी वाले में भी बात लिख सकते हैं. देन इलस्ट्रेट इट्स सिग्निफिकेंस इन अंडरस्टैंडिंग इकोनॉमिक ecosystem stability. Now the question is asking you to connect. जो कनेक्शन एस्टेब्लिश करने की बात होती है यूपीएससी एग्जाम्स में, सो द क्वेश्चन इज आस्किंग यू टू कनेक्ट पिरामिड्स टू इकोसिस्टम स्टेबिलिटी. इन दोनों के बीच में क्या कनेक्शन है, यू नीड टू एस्टेब्लिश. फॉर एग्जाम्पल यू कैन मेंशन दैट इफ अ पर्टिकुलर ट्रॉफिक लेवल, इफ अ पर्टिकुलर species is getting harmed, getting extinct, then this pyramid will get impacted. For example, you take the pyramid of number. If the phytoplankton are lying at the lowest level, if the phytoplankton are dying, obviously the upper level species will get impacted and the ecological stability will get hampered. So this way you can write. Then in next question, again, it is a very good question. Nature has intrinsic mechanism to maintain ecological balance through self-regulating processes. What are the self-regulating processes of the nature? Self-regulating processes means the processes which keep working by themselves without any artificial or human or outside intervention. So first thing in the introduction of this question, you can simply define self-regulating processes. You can give some examples. In the context of recent environmental challenges, analyze how human interventions are disrupting these processes. So the question is expecting you to establish the connection between human interventions and disruption of self-regulating processes. This is the connection that you need to establish in the question. First, you define self-regulating processes. What are self-regulating processes? Like you can give example of nutrient cycling. You can give example of predator-prey relationship. You can give example of ecological succession. So self-regulating processes, we just a while ago we discussed about nutrient cycling, carbon cycle, phosphorus cycle. That is a kind of self-regulating process. Carbon cycle is working by itself. If human intervention is, if human activities are not disrupting it, then that carbon cycle will keep functioning, and it will be very much like fruitful, and it will like very much sustainable for the ecosystem or environment of the entire earth. But if human intervention comes in, for example deforestation, you are cutting down forest for the name, in the name of building cities, building roads, then the forest which act as a carbon sink, that carbon will come out in the atmosphere, and it will lead to global warming, it will lead to climate change. So this way you can connect. So human intervention is disrupting these processes. Then you can you can also write about construction activities. In urban areas there is a lot of construction activities, there is a lot of concretization, which is leading to trapping of heat, and which is increasing which is leading to global warming. This way also you can connect. Then you can also connect, like you can also write about coastal areas, like how activities, developmental activities in coastal areas, how it is impacting the marine ecosystem. This way you can write a very good answer on this question. Then we have increasing ecosystem degradation and biodiversity loss highlighted by recent global reports. So this is an introductory statement. The introductory statement of the question is talking about there is a increasing ecosystem degradation. इकोसिस्टम का डिग्रेडेशन हो रहा है एंड बायोडाइवर्सिटी का लॉस हो रहा है. दो चीजें यहाँ पे इंट्रोडक्टरी स्टेटमेंट में कही जा रही हैं. And this is being highlighted by recent global reports. What are those recent global reports? This is not clearly written in the question, but if you are aware, if you are keeping a track on current affairs, then while writing the answer to this question, you can simply introduce some reports. For example, you can introduce the report of IPBES, और यू कैन राइट अबाउट द रिपोर्ट ऑफ IPCC. इन रिपोर्ट्स को आप मेंशन कर सकते हैं अपने इंट्रोडक्शन में, बिकॉज दैट विल एक्ट एज अ वैल्यू एडिशन कंटेंट फॉर योर आंसर. द क्वेश्चन इज आस्किंग एक्चुअली अबाउट एक्सप्लेन द की फंक्शनल एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ इकोसिस्टम. व्हाट आर द फंक्शनल एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ इकोसिस्टम? द क्वेश्चन इज टॉकिंग अबाउट functional aspects of ecosystem. What are the functional aspects of ecosystem? So again, functional aspects, you can talk about productivity of ecosystem, you can talk about nutrient cycling, you can talk about pollination. These are actually functional aspects of ecosystem. How ecosystem services, how ecosystem is leading to nutrient cycling. Proper functioning of ecosystem is very important for productivity. Proper functioning of ecosystem is very important for sustainability, because if pollination keeps happening properly, plant growth, species growth, that will keep balance will be maintained. So this way you can write about functional aspects of ecosystem. How do these functions contribute to ecological balance and human well-being? So simply you need to explain. Again, while connecting the functions of ecosystem, you should discuss, you should handle both the aspect. First is ecological balance and second is human well-being. You can write about nutrient cycling is very important for, the nutrients are very important for human survivability. For example, you can give an example of water cycle, for example. Water cycle is very important. If water cycling keeps happening properly, groundwater recharge keeps happening properly, then it will obviously very much helpful for human well-being. You can write about ecological balance. For example, you can talk in terms of predator-prey relationship. If predators are keeping a check on the prey, and if prey is properly available, sufficiently available, then predators will survive. So that will maintain the balance in the ecology, so the ecosystem. So this way you can connect both the dimensions and you can write a very good answer on this. Moving to the next question. So the seventh question was regarding examine the different types of species interactions. Species interaction. is the key term over here. The question is asking you to examine different kinds of species interactions in ecosystems. So first, in the introduction itself, you can define species interactions, how different kinds of species are interacting, what are the different kinds of interactions. So you can for example, you can write about mutualism, different kind of ecosystem interaction, mutualism. Then you can also mention predation. Then you can also write about competition. Likewise, you can write about commensalism, you can write about amensalism, you can write about parasitism. Then you should also define very briefly all these different different types of species interactions. For example, in mutualism, both the species benefit. In predation, one species getting harmed, other one is getting benefited. In competition, both species are getting harmed. Likewise, you can in commensalism, one is getting harmed, one is getting benefited. One is getting harmed, one is having no impact. So this way you can write about species interactions in ecosystems. How do these interactions influence biodiversity? स्पीशीज इंटरेक्शंस का कनेक्शन एस्टैब्लिश करना है विद बायोडाइवर्सिटी एंड इकोसिस्टम स्टेबिलिटी. You need to establish a relation between species interactions with biodiversity and ecosystem stability. Again, you can give example of predation. In predation, you can give example of tiger and rabbit. Very common example of predation, tiger and rabbit. If there is no tiger, rabbit population may explode. If there is no rabbit, tiger population may go extinct because they will have nothing to eat. खाने को ही नहीं मिलेगा कुछ. So this way, and this is very important for biodiversity. If there is ample population of both the predator and prey, the biodiversity will be maintained and the ecosystem stability will remain. Ecosystem will remain stable. If anyone is missing, then ecosystem may get disrupted, get destroyed. So this way you can establish the importance of species interaction in terms of biodiversity and ecosystem stability. Then the next question is about ecological factors play a critical role in determining the distribution, behavior and survival of organisms. Three aspects. Always identify the keywords: distribution, behavior and survival of organism. Distribution of organism, behavior of organism and survival of organism. अब ये तीन चीजें हैं. These three things are to be connected with ecological factors, because question is saying ecological factors play a role, critical role in determining distribution of organisms, behavior of organisms and survival of organisms. This is the introductory part of the question, introductory statement of the question. Actual question starts from here. Examine the major abiotic and biotic factors influencing ecosystems and explain how changes in these factors can disrupt ecological balance. So first, in the introductory statement, the question talked about ecological factors and the relation with three things: distribution, behavior and survival of organisms. The question is now asking you to examine the biotic and abiotic factors and how these factors influence ecosystems. This is the first part. Second part is explain how changes in these factors can disrupt ecological balance. So the question has two parts. First part is asking you to examine the biotic and abiotic factors and their influence on ecosystem. Biotic और abiotic factor का influence क्या है ecosystem पे? This is the first part, to examine this. The second part is explain करना है आपको कि how the changes in these factors can disrupt ecological balance. So, the perfect answer will be one which will write on both the parts of the question. If you are writing on one part and missing on the other part, obviously the examiner will cut your marks. So first thing is that in the introductory part, introduction of your answer, you should define ecological factors. What are the ecological factors? What are biotic and abiotic factors? Biotic factors means the factors which have life. Abiotic factors means which don't have life. Biotic factors may you can include the name of trees, you can include animals. In abiotic factors you can mention sunlight, soil, and then you need to write how these factors are important for ecosystem, because if ecosystem is all about interaction between different species, if even one of the biotic factors are getting harmed or getting removed from the ecosystem functioning will get impacted very negatively. This you should write. Then you should explain how the changes in these factors can disrupt ecological balance. It is connected to the first part, but in the second part you need to mention about disruption. You need to write about disruption in ecological balance. So you can simply write about the very common example of deforestation. If there is lots of deforestation, some species may go extinct, some species may do migration, so that will disrupt the ecological balance. So this way you can very beautifully you can like structure your answer, and in conclusion you can give a visionary statement that it is very important to ensure that the biotic and abiotic factors are not disrupted, not changed, so that the ecological balance can be maintained. This way of very simple conclusion can work. Moving to the next question. Rising instances of forest fires, extreme weather events and habitat loss reported globally and in India. So the question is mentioning 3 types of events related to climate and ecology. First is forest fire, second is extreme weather, third is habitat loss. And all these 5 types of incidents happening globally as well as in India. Then the question is asking you to critically analyze the impact of ecosystem destruction on biodiversity, climate resilience, and human livelihoods. Impact of ecosystem destruction. The first keyword is ecosystem destruction. The question is asking you to establish the relation between ecosystem destruction and biodiversity, climate resilience, and human livelihoods. आपको इकोसिस्टम डिस्ट्रक्शन का इम्पैक्ट जो है उसको इन 3 एस्पेक्ट्स के ऊपर एस्टैब्लिश करना है. Read the question very carefully, identify the keywords, and then start structuring your answer so that all the dimensions, all the keywords, all the aspects of the question can be handled proportionately, properly. अब इस क्वेश्चन की बात करें तो फर्स्ट यू कैन डिफाइन ecosystem destruction. क्या होता है ecosystem destruction? In the question itself you will find the very important helpful terms which can help you to define ecosystem destruction. You can write about forest fires, you can write about extreme weather events, you can write about habitat loss, you can in extreme weather events you can write about the cloud burst, extreme rainfall, you can give the example of Uttarakhand, you can write about heat waves. In forest fires you can give the example of Californian fires. In habitat loss you can write about deforestation and how the forests are getting removed and how it is impacting the habitat of various different kinds of species, and then you can connect all these as an ecosystem destruction. पहले आपने इन चीज़ों को एक्सप्लेन कर दिया, एग्जाम्पल दे दिया, देन यू कनेक्टेड ऑल दीज कि दीज आर डिफरेंट काइंड्स ऑफ डिफरेंट मैनिफेस्टेशंस ऑफ इकोसिस्टम डिस्ट्रक्शन, एंड देन you need to establish ecosystem destruction with biodiversity. You can write ki if aquatic, suppose there is like very recently a ship got sunk with some hazardous elements in the Arabian Ocean, so that is obviously going to impact the biodiversity biodiversity of Arabian Sea, a marine ecosystem. Then you can give an example of climate resilience, talk about climate resilience, how the more of burning of fossil fuel is leading to more emissions of carbon dioxide and harmful gases, how it is leading to global warming, and how it is impacting the climate resilience. You should also write about human livelihoods. The people residing near coastal areas are dependent on the seafood or sea related resources for their livelihood. You can give example of Niamgiri hills. You can give examples of tribes which have been like dependent on the forest produce, but because of our human activities, because of other events, destruction of the ecology owing to human activities, those human livelihoods are getting impacted. The purpose is like you should be handling all the aspects in the question. It is not that you handled only biodiversity and you thought कि मेरा तो काम हो गया. ऐसे नहीं होता. You should handle all the aspects, then only examiner will be giving you proper marks. In conclusion, you can suggest some way forward about planning, proper resource utilization, effective urban planning, policy formulation, stakeholder approach. This type of key terms, if you can use in your answers, obviously it will beautify your answer. Then we came at the last question. In light of India's emergence as the world's most populous country and growing urbanization pressures, critically examine how population growth intensifies stress on natural resources. First is stress on natural resources. Question is stress on natural resources. But stress on natural resources क्या? कुछ भी अनाप शनाप चीज नहीं. Stress on natural resources needs to be connected with growing urbanization and population growth. The question expects you to establish the relation between growing urbanization and population growth with stress on natural resources. ज़्यादा अर्बनाइजेशन होने से, ज़्यादा पॉपुलेशन बढ़ने से, अनरिस्ट्रिक्टेड अनरेगुलेटेड ऐसे ही पॉपुलेशन की एक्सप्लोजन होने से, हाउ इट इज creating a stress on natural resources. These are the three keywords of the question. So while writing an answer, first you can define a stress on natural resources, or you can start with the example that land is a limited resource, but due to population explosion, there are lots of communities which are not able to get their proper housing, and to also for the sake of urbanization or to build residence for the growing population, to feed the growing population, there is a destruction of forest को हम काट दे रहे हैं. वहाँ पे we are building cities, we are like expansion of cities is happening. You can give example of Delhi, how expansion of Delhi led to destruction of the Aravalis. You can also give example of Western Ghats for the sake of tourism. You can give example of Himalayan regions, Himalayan places where for the sake of for the excuse of like promotion of tourism, how the natural resources are being put under stress. You can also give example of water, how you can give example of like how water is put under a lot of stress for the sake of agriculture, unsustainable use of water. This way you can like connect urbanization, population growth को natural resources से. You can give example of Delhi, like the water scarcity in Delhi. You can give example of Chennai, flooding in Chennai. This way you can like write what strategies can ensure resource sustainability in the face of demographic expansion. So the question is asking you to mention some strategies. It means the question is explicitly asking you to mention some way forward, suggest some way forward that how resource sustainability can be ensured in the face of demographic expansion. भाई पॉपुलेशन तो बढ़ता रहेगा साहब, बट पॉपुलेशन बढ़ते के टाइम हम ऐसा क्या करें कि आवर रिसोर्स सस्टेनेबिलिटी कैन बी ensured. Question is asking you to give some way forward. You can give like proper regulation. You can write about environmental impact assessment. You can write about responsible tourism. You can write about sustainable tourism. You can write about sustainable growth. ये सारे keywords you can use to beautify your answer. Then in the conclusion, you can write that given the importance of natural resources and given the importance of natural resources, it is very much important, it is very much significant that urbanization is regulated properly, population growth is ensured, that the population growth does not negatively impact natural resources. ऐसा कुछ आप conclusion दे सकते हैं that will sum up the entire idea of your answer in one sentence. Make sure that this question also had two parts. One part asking you to establish connection of urbanization and population growth with natural resources. The second part was asking to give you way forward. So it's दोनों parts, you should deal with both the parts to make your answer balanced. Both the parts should be given proportional space, should be proportional words, should be devoted to all the parts of the question. Then only the examiner will give you proper or accordingly award you better marks. So this way we conclude this session. I hope it was useful. Take care. All the best.